Well, as you know, that the Mujahideens in 1996, when Taliban was founded in 94 and all, have been fully supported by the Saudi Arabia, by UAE, and they even recognized their government at that time. However, if, over time, the Taliban began with the support of Al Qaeda, came on the horizon with the Americans, and the Saudis tried very hard after 9/11 to ask Taliban to hand over uh, Osama bin Laden to them, and which the Taliban refused. Because if you remember that when Osama bin Laden met Mullah Omar, who was the founder of Taliban movement, they had agreed that in keeping with their tribal loyalties or in keeping with their friendships, they will not, they will support one another and will not undercut the other. And that's when the Saudis fell out with the Taliban. And in the meantime, of course, the Americans came and intervened in Afghanistan against the terrorist groups and Al Qaeda and others. So Taliban became an enemy in that sense of the term, and the Saudi Arabia had to improve its ties with the Americans as they were in the dock at that moment. A very similar situation as UAE. After that, we have seen the Arab Spring has happened, and the Arab Spring means the political Islam became a major course. And here also now, this time we see in certain quarters they are looking at it as if it is the same kind of hierarchy, the mullah hierarchy, the Maulvis, which are coming to power. And that is more or less like the Iranian kind of system that might come into being eventually. And that is something I think that the UAE is very much against this political Islam. Moreover, we have seen that because Qatar became the major player in the talks on behalf of the Americans, whether it was during the Qatar blockade or since they opened their first office for Taliban in Doha in 2013. So Qatar became the major interlocutor. And if you remember that during the 4 years we have seen when the Qatar blockade ensued, which ended only in Al Ula summit in Saudi Arabia, the Qataris tried to use this conference diplomacy and becoming a go-to country for all these kind of major problems, and therefore they were in the highlight, and the others were turned down. Then Biden government also took a clue from the way the Saudis and Emiratis were close to the previous Trump administration, and they took a more equanimous approach in that regard. So they have been watching. But if you come to think of it, this was not a very muted approach, because their ambassador, Saudi ambassador to the UN, clearly mentioned that we must respect the wishes of the Afghan people when Taliban became victorious. And so they have been making outreach. They have extended support if necessary and Taliban will be dependent on them for the financial support eventually. But it will also depend exactly how Iran is going to react, because Iran and US relations are not are at their worst at the moment, with the conservative government coming, who have also praised the return of Taliban. They are the ones who are supplying them oil and gas. So there would be this Iran-Saudi competition which will play out there. As far as UAE is concerned, we have seen that UAE is hosting Ashraf Ghani, which Oman had refused because they didn't want to get into this trouble. So did the Tajiks. They didn't want Ashraf Ghani to be hosted in that place, so that the Taliban, when they really take power, feel embarrassed. So I think that the internal politics will continue, but Saudi Arabia will play its card in concert with this competition, regional competition with Iranians. And Turkey or other country which is becoming stronger, which will become stronger in Afghanistan, as they are discussing about managing the Kabul airport. So I think that these four countries will play their role. And of course, today, as we have seen, the US has moved its embassy from Kabul to Qatar, Doha. So Qatar will continue to be the major interlocutor for the Americans, and of course Pakistanis are very much there. So I think that their own internal regional politics will continue to play as far as dealing with the Taliban is concerned. Americans have asked all these countries to come clean. And so, whichever way the Americans go, I think UAE and Saudi will go that way.